And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live and the Little Italy Podcast.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today on our Little Italy Podcast and Deborah Kobylt Live. And please welcome Davide Fiore. He is the director of the most incredible film. Oh, my goodness. It's called A Little Fellow, The Legacy of A.P. Giannini.
Yes.
Do many of you know who A.P. Giannini was? Because I wasn't necessarily sure until I saw this film, and also when I learned about him at the Italian American Museum in Los Angeles. A.P. Giannini was in fact the founder of Bank of America, and his story is absolutely incredible. And there is a reason why Davide decided to call this A Little Fellow. So Davide, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Deborah, for having me.
Yeah, and we will also get into your background a little bit later, because you've done so much in the entertainment industry and the arts and fashion, but it leads us to where we are today with this magnificent film. Tell me about the film and how you got involved with telling this story.
So I discovered the story of A.P. Giannini when I landed in San Francisco in 2017. I came from Italy. I didn't know anything about the story. I was waiting for my work permit. Because, you know, after the visa, you have to wait for the work permit to start working. And so I had these 3 months just wandering around the city, and I found this little plaque on a building in Montgomery Street that says that an Italian American called A.P. Giannini founded the Bank of Italy, later called Bank of America. And I was shocked. I was like, okay, I need to know more. And then I found, of course, his Wikipedia page, and I was like, oh my God, this story is incredible. So I went to the library, I borrowed a couple of books, reading them super fast, and I wanted to know more. And so it was like, is there any movie about him? Is there any documentary about him? And at the same time, I was looking for a project to introduce myself to the film community of San Francisco and later California. And so I didn't find any movie. I didn't find any documentary. I was like, okay, this is the story. It's I have to work on this one. And, you know, at the beginning, I really thought it was a short documentary or a short movie. And then the story became bigger and bigger and bigger. I couldn't believe it. And it was like, this story is larger than life. I felt, you know, I wanted to tell us a small story. I didn't think about that as a big story, but then it was impossible to grasp everything in a short doc. And then starting talking with producers and introduce them to the story, they were shocked that they didn't know about him. And I told them, the more they were shocked, because they were like, this guy should be in history books. This guy should have statues all around the nation. But they didn't have it. We still don't have them. So they were like, no, we have to make a movie. And when we did the first cut, it was something like 4 hours long. We were like,
my goodness.
Are we gonna do a TV show? Because it can be for of a limited series. So, but then we end up like, no, let's start with a documentary, feature documentary, and see where it lands. And to be fair, that first cut was really just to see all the material that we had on him, all the stories that we heard, and we were able to document. I felt like, okay, after that cut, I have to find something bad about him, because it's impossible that a person is that good. You know, and it was so good for so many years. He looked like an Hollywood script to me.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Let's tell people a little bit about him. Where did he come from in Italy? And it's called A Little Fellow for a reason, and basically because he cared about the little fellow who basically was putting his or her money under the mattress or in a can in the kitchen, which is what my grandmother used to do. You know, she'd pull money out of the can and give me like $5, which I know was so much for her to do. Right. And these are real stories. People really did stuff their money under mattress, you know. So tell us about him and how he ended up. Gosh, it's such a comprehensive story, because this is a man who never gave up. Right. He never gave up.
No. And so we have to think a couple of things before introducing him. we have to introduce the Italian Americans at the time.
Yes.
So that, right now being Italian Americans is cool. Everybody loves Italy and everybody, but when Giannini's parents came to the States from Genoa, a small Favara del Vallo, a small town outside Genoa, so Liguria, north of Italy, and then actually it's 1 hour away from my hometown, Torino. So they came and Italians weren't well accepted.
No.
There was a lot of racism against the Italians and against the Italian Americans. So it was a tough period for him to grow up. And as a son of immigrants, he had a tough life, but that shaped him and made him very empathetic with everybody. He
Yeah.
didn't care just about Italians or Italian Americans. He cared about everybody. Chinese, Japanese, Germans, Polish. He was really a man without borders. He was all about bridging community, bridging industries. He kept thinking outside the box all the time. And he did it with such a humble nature that I was surprised, because I felt like, when you have a bank and you became the biggest bank in the world, you can become a little greedy or mean. And he still think about the little fellow, the poor people. In some way, I wanted to call it a little fellow because it was everything except a little fellow. It was a tall guy, 6 feet tall, and for Italians, it was a little bit tall. And he was big with money as well. He created the biggest bank in the United States and later in the world. And he was really very humble. He still thought about people, and he didn't take all the money for himself. He believed that $500,000 in your bank account is enough. You don't need much more for your lifetime.
Well, wait a minute. That certainly was a lot of money back in the day. That's a lot of money to a lot of people now.
Okay, yes, but we have to think about, and it's true because we cannot say that he died poor, but to put it in perspective, and we said during the movie, his bank was valued $6 million at the time he died.
Wow.
While Chase, JP Morgan Chase was 4.5 million, right? So Giannini was worth $498,000. JP Morgan was worth 80 million.
Wow, that puts that into such perspective.
So it's like, and he didn't.
Wow.
Yeah, so think about that. He was the founder and the president, the director of the biggest bank, 6 million. And he was like, first of all, he didn't own the bank. That was different from other people, from other bankers.
Right.
He didn't own the bank. The number of shares that he had at the end of his life was the same number of shares of any farmer or fisherman in San Francisco, in LA, and because his policy was that you don't have to own more than 100 shares of Bank of America. Bank of Italy first and Bank of America later. So he capped the shares. And if you think about the stock market nowadays, that was very, very progressive and revolutionary. It's, I want to say it's anti-capitalist because he was a capitalist as well, but it was very democratic in the way of his capitalism. And so while JP Morgan was like worth 20 times his own bank. So that's put in perspective. Even if he wasn't super wealthy, it was wealthy, of course. But
yeah, absolutely.
Never donate money, a percentage of his money. He donated all his money all the time. So if we think about Berkeley, in 1928, he received 1.5 million. That was worth his year in 1928. He was worth 1.5 million, and it was just 5% of his bank, and they gave it to him. He took those money, like 1.5, and throw it to Berkeley.
You're saying UC Berkeley. They gave the money to UC
Yeah.
Berkeley. I believe for the Department of their agriculture. Say it
Yes,
again.
for agriculture. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
Which
to say, because he was, every time he went above 500,000, it was giving money away, and all the money, not just a percentage. And we keep discovering stories about him that are always more astonishing to hear. Because, for example, he founded the A.P. Giannini Foundation. And he founded with the money that he received from the bank. It was just a big donation. I think it was $500,000 at the time. And he did it because his son was sick. Then you expect someone to build a foundation to find a solution for his son. Well, the reality in his statement was that the money were for the best science. His words were best science. So he wanted to doctors and labs to find a cure, not only for his son, but for his son,
and others.
Yeah, but it was for all the kind of illness that you can have, not
Exactly.
just what his son had.
Exactly.
So even if he was at the end of his days and he had to build something that helped, he didn't prioritize his family. So it was like, yes, if you can help my son, fine, but you need to help whoever needs help. I don't want my son to step ahead or to be, even though, you know, his son died like 3 years after him.
Right.
And so it's impressive that till the end of the days, he never put his family or him
Ahead.
And one of the things that it was tough, and probably it's one of your questions, I don't know, but it's when we worked on archives, it wasn't a person in front of the camera. Never. It was always like, and even when we have pictures of him with his employees, he's always the one in the back. It's always like you cannot really see him. It's always, he's not the person that want to stand in front. In fact, I think he spoke publicly probably just one time.
Oh, wow. Let's talk a little bit about his early life. What inspired him? Like when he was first here in America, what inspired him? I know that he saw a lot. He saw the Italians working hard in the mines and the mills and the canals and the sewers. He witnessed, what was going on with the KKK and heard many stories about lynchings. Like, what formed him to become the man that he became and to give to the little fellow? Tell us about his character. What formed him?
Well, first of all, he witnessed the killing, the murder of his father. He was 7 years old and he saw his father dying in front of his eyes, killed by for a money reason. I think his father owned a dollar or $1.50 to someone, and yeah, he saw his father dying for a matter of money. So I feel that was definitely shaped him.
Yeah.
So, but then when his mother remarried, and we're thinking about remarrying in the Catholic environment in the
Right.
1880s, 1890s. So it was really, even his family was a very progressive family, kind of, out of the box thinkers. She remarried to a man called Scatina. And Giannini learned a lot of from Scatina. Scatina was a vegetable producer, and Giannini learned a lot from him and from his job working at the wharf, working, dealing with people. And he understood that people wanted to know what who they were dealing with. You know, they wanted to um, have a relationship with the broker, with the vegetable producer. So that's where he learned that people want a relationship, want a real person. And he translated that later when he founded his bank. The point of founding his bank is not, he left school when he was 15. So he wasn't that kind of educated to start a bank. His family didn't come from a bank kind of roots,
Right.
stuff like that. He wasn't a son of someone. So he had to learn. Likely after he married Clorinda Cuneo, he inherited the seats of his father-in-law in a bank. But we have to think about that banks at the time, they didn't serve everybody. They
No.
served just wealthy people. And that to him was totally wrong. So that's why it was like banks didn't serve his family. Banks didn't serve his friends. And so it was like, no, banks should serve the fishermen, the farmers, the teachers, firefighters, all these people didn't have access to banks. That's definitely shaped him, and he started with that. And I would say the first earthquake was the death of his father. The second earthquake in his life was the 1906 earthquake in San.
Right.
And that shaped him as well because he saw that in a moment of need, in a moment of, in a moment of need, the banks didn't want to help the people. They wanted to rebuild buildings. And it was like, if you take time rebuilding the buildings, there will be no San Francisco anymore. People are gonna move somewhere else. And so he gave money on a handshake. And what we didn't say in the documentary, but what was very strong is that he helped also people that were, not from his bank. So in that way, he gained even more clients because this bank was founded in 1904 and the earthquake happened in 1906. So it was like a very young bank,
Right.
not a lot of customers, but he was like, no, I see people in need. I'm gonna help people in need and I'm gonna do it as at the best as I can. So, and that's where the famous the paintings of him with two barrels and a plank giving money to people. It was impressive because he gave money also to his competitors. And he didn't care about that. He was just, we need to rebuild the city. And that was his goal. So I
But
feel.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I felt like, he was really a man of the people and he really cared for the greater good. It was much more for if the city thrive, we all thrive.
Exactly. And what's interesting about him is that's exactly correct, right? But because he built up such goodwill when many of the banks didn't want to loan money, except if you're building a giant building, he really established such goodwill with the people that he ended up gathering even more customers, which was very interesting. This was his way of doing business, and the people then responded. So then what happened after? Like, how did he grow his bank after that? How did he continue to grow? And at that time, it was the Bank of Italy, correct?
Yes, it was Bank of Italy till 1929 or
Right.
28. So the idea for him was that right after the earthquake, he saw this problem with in 1907 there was a big market crash, and
Right.
he realized that only big banks can survive. And
Hmm.
so it was like there should be another idea, something else that we can do to fix it. And he discovered in Europe and in Canada, he discovered the branch banking system that it didn't exist in the United States. And it was like, oh, actually, if we have the branch banking system here, we can survive a crash.
Right.
But that idea, he had to push for that, and he had to fight a lot. He was considered anti-American because he was proposing something like that. It's incredible that now, you can go to any ITM everywhere in the country. But at the beginning, his idea was fought against. But that was also one way to build the wealth of his bank. So acquiring banks in different communities, and really that was a nice healthy way to build a bank that was present, because his idea was like, if a bank is in a, let's say, farmers area, and there's a bad year for crops, or there's a bad years for, a bad season, they're
Right.
losing their money. But if you
Right.
have branch banking, you have money moving, and nobody is losing money. You can keep having loans, giving loans to people, even if it's a bad season for whatever crop they were working on. So that idea helped him to become bigger and bigger. And the reality is that it didn't rely on relationships based on families, kind of, if you are a son of, if you are, he was really relying on people with ideas. And so
Hmm.
he was really a gambler in that sense. He felt also that you have to lose sometimes. You cannot always win. So he was a risk taker, and that helped him a lot, because he really bet. He did bet on like huge ideas that then became super successful, and he was behind them. And we don't have to forget that he was the first one also that opened. So it's so funny for me to think that branch banking didn't exist back then. Because
Yeah.
about the United States, when you are in Italy, you think about the United States as such a finance strong economy, and you think like branch banking was, not invented by them, but then you realize that not even the banks, that they were not even open to women.
That's
And
right.
And it's so fun. It's so funny because when I discovered that, I was like, oh my God, I come from Italy, and I feel like that United States were always ahead of time. And then you discover that till 1921, women didn't have the right to vote. 1920, they didn't have the right to vote.
That's right.
Oh my God. But as soon
That's
as
right.
they got the right to vote, Giannini opened the women department in the Bank of Italy. Bank of Italy was the first one to give banking services to women. Not only a bank that gives, so women before Giannini weren't allowed to have their own bank account. They had it with their father or their husband name on it. So they could
Right.
withdraw or deposit money without the husband on their side or the father on their side. After Giannini, he did, women could, like they can nowadays, right? So, but he didn't want just women customers. He wanted women to run the bank. So at the time, the women department was run by women. And that was very important because he was in it was his policy from the beginning of Bank of Italy, having people from the community or from the minority to run his bank in a way to understand the problems of the community or the minority. So his policy was that a man cannot understand a woman problems. or problems, or not problems in terms of problems, but in terms like if, men at the time, they didn't understand, they understood their issues, they didn't understand women's issues. And so they didn't give them loans, while another woman can understand it and give the loan. So that was always his policy. He wanted to even his branches were always with minorities. They had brochures in different languages based on
Yeah.
branch was. And so it was his way to understand the community. And even, we don't say that in the documentary, but even when he bought other banks, he didn't fire the employees from the previous bank.
Mm.
He changed the name of the bank, but he kept the employees from the previous bank. He didn't put his people. He kept the people from other banks because he was like, they are familiar with the customers. Customers, they want to keep saying the same teller's face. They want to keep saying the same people running the bank. And so he didn't fire the previous bank employees. It was, so that's, I feel that it was all these together create his wealth at the end of the day, but his popularity, it became popular amongst the little fellows, because they really loved him. And we still see that today. I can tell you, 80 years after he passed away, we still have people coming to the screenings of our movie just to pay respect to Giannini. And
Oh, wow.
it's so touching. In San Francisco, we also had a big Chinese community audience come to the screening. And we were surprised, and they were like, no, because Giannini really thought about us. They came,
Wow.
well, I can say they came even 110 years after what he did, because they were like, oh, we kept banking with Bank of America because it was Giannini's bank. And not just Italians, I can tell you,
No, it's everyone.
everywhere. And in San Jose, we had these great community. It's incredible. People keep coming to us at every screening. And I can tell you, sometimes they come 2, 3 times. I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
people watching the movie 2, 3 times, just to pay respect to Giannini and to celebrate and bring more friends and say, this is the guy that we that gave loans to my grandpa, and this is the guy that if we are well now, it's because of this guy. And it's incredible what we are seeing from the audience.
Well, you know what's amazing? A lot of people don't realize this. The film It's a Wonderful Life is very much based on Mr. Giannini. Is that correct?
Say again?
The film It's a Wonderful Life. Do you
Yes.
know that film? Can you tell us about that? How it's apparently based on
On
his
a
life.
Yeah. Well, not only that, it's also so Giannini. Giannini bet on a big industry that was the Hollywood industry, like he bet on other industries. And one of the filmmakers that he helped was Frank Capra, right? So Frank
Right.
Capra was very thankful to him that he wrote It's a Wonderful Life and American Madness about A.P. Giannini. He didn't, the characters in those two movies are based on A.P. Giannini. It's because Giannini was really seen like this person from, like such a big entrepreneur, such a big banker, but with really humble origins and humble values. And,
Right.
all about family, and it was about the community, even though he had to run a big bank. One thing that we loved with the producers about the what we learn about Giannini is that he kept being a family man.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you read about these big entrepreneur or bankers, their family life it's terrible.
Yeah.
They got apart. It's he kept having time for his sons, sons and daughters, and then for his granddaughters. He
Yeah.
had went to the movie theater with his granddaughters. It's such an impressive it's such an impressive person in my perspective, because money can really rule you, and he didn't make that happening.
Right. He used money instead to help others as opposed to ruling him, which really is quite remarkable. I want to step back a little bit about how you were talking about how he financed some incredible projects in Hollywood. What were some of the other projects that, in fact, he did?
Well,
Like the Ten Commandments, right? Let's talk
yeah.
about you can just list a few of them if you would.
So, the funny story starts where, and this is a real story, but it's like, it's an Hollywood script to me.
Yeah.
When he came to Los Angeles, there was an entrepreneur that needed money for chairs for his theater. And Giannini was like, okay, why chairs for your theater? I want to see, and blah, blah, blah. And he went to the theater and he was like, oh, but this theater, there's no stage, there's a screen. What is this screen? What is happening? There, you have to think about it was like 1915 or 1917, something around that. So the movie industry was very at the beginning. And so these guys said, look, we are screening movies. And what are movies? What are you doing with movies? And Giannini was invited to the set. And he went to the set. He was shocked. He was impressed by what they were doing. And he was like, look, you need money for the chairs, but probably you need money for the movie set. You need money to make movies. And these entrepreneurs said, yes, of course, if no banks are lending money to us, if your bank wants to lend money, we are happy. And Giannini started lending money to this entrepreneur. The little he knew that this guy was Charlie Chaplin, and the movie that he was founding was The Kid.
Wow.
So it was like, this is how a lot of people started in Hollywood, because they went to Giannini and Giannini believed in their vision. One other guy was Cecil DeMille, that he had this, huge movie, The Ten Commandments. And because he wasn't able to find the money, Giannini went to the set, saw what he was doing, and he was like, look, I can help you buy the movie from your investors. The moment Cecil B. DeMille showed his investors that he was about to buy, the investors were like, oh, wait a second.
Right.
We have to see what's going on here. We want to know more. And so they finished to invest in his movie, and it became a great classic. And then Giannini saw one thing. It was like, this Cecil B. DeMille has a great eye for movies. Maybe I can hire him for the movie department in Los Angeles. And then Cecil B. DeMille became the lending guy for Bank of Italy and in the Hollywood industry. But these are just few stories. And least but not less is a guy called Walt Disney that was laughed out of the room because of his crazy idea. He was doing an animated movie and nobody believed in him, because they were like, banks at that point were lending money to movies, but never to a feature film. And Walt Disney was really out of budget with a huge delay, and he discovered this new technique that helped make the plans. So the animation was more realistic, and you see
Right.
this parallax effect. That it was the first one to play with, and it was the first one to have a feature film. At the time, there were no feature films. Usually, animated movie were at the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie, or in the break. But there was never a feature film. And the fear was that you could have epileptic seizure, during the movie because the flickering images was, of course, all fake, but nobody believed. When Rosenberg, that was the landing guy for Giannini, saw the movie, it was like, this is gonna be great. It's gonna make
Yeah.
that full of money, and really said, we're gonna make the loan. And to be and Giannini, then in the 30s, it was Bank of America at the time. They started lending money to all the projects of Walt Disney, and they became their bank.
Wow.
And it's funny that after Giannini died, the bank kept helping Walt Disney also with Disneyland, you know, and that's why Bank of America had a branch in Disneyland till, I think,
Oh,
they were the only bank to have a branch in Disneyland. So, but that's
you
just the vision of one man can go, for decades. I
for
have.
decades, generations, and to this day, because he did not die with a great deal of money. He gave much of it away,
Yeah.
right? Um, his family was very involved, right? Even after he passed. Because what was his goal after he was gone? What did he want to do? He wanted to make sure the Bank of America that it was preserved for the people, not
Yeah,
just for him.
was that
And
was his
go
goal.
ahead.
Yeah, that was his goal. But the family was involved, I think, till the 80s, and then they totally left. I think Claire Giannini was alive till 97, something like that.
Wow.
And of course, they left. I think they were on the board of the bank, but then when the bank was acquired by national banks, I think they totally left. They're not involved anymore with the bank, even though, of course, they are connected, but they have no power of anything else. And the Bank of America nowadays, it's very, very different from the Bank of America back then, because of course, decades after, things changed a lot, and yeah. But
Yeah.
the family tried to keep him alive, but also to protect his legacy, because there were years where people tried to rip his legacy apart, like they tried to rip his bank apart, and
Hmm.
they tried to um, keep that. And when we contacted them for the first time, they were a little skeptical of
Oh.
us, because they weren't sure who we were and what we want to do. Um, yeah.
Well, they certainly were involved with the film,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because they spoke about him. I mean, you certainly earned their trust.
Absolutely.
You really did.
Yeah.
The story you told was magnificent. Before we let you go, I just want to speak very briefly about your background, right? In Italy, you worked in fashion, you've done photography, you've done other documentaries as well here in America. I mean, you're quite an accomplished artist, I call you, in many areas. You want to just briefly talk to our audience about what you've done, and then where can they see the film? I guess there's other film festivals where they can catch it, but also when will it be available for the general public to view as well? Let's talk about all that.
So, yes, I started as a filmmaker in Italy, and I was a director. Mostly I worked on music videos, on fashion shows. I work a lot for corporates, commercials, all this kind of stuff. And I really work for any company that about, Italian company that I work with. But really, I didn't do much until I landed in the United States about filmmaking. I did a
Mm-hmm.
I did a short doc when I was in Italy. I did a short movie, but it was tougher in Italy to do filmmaking, so I had to pay my bills doing commercials and fashion and Uh, then here, yes, once I landed in the United States, my being mostly an editor, a film editor, helped me to work on many different documentaries and TV shows and stuff like that. I don't consider myself an artist. I consider myself a creative person.
Okay.
I feel like artists are other people. I know I don't know how to say. I can get creative. I can get.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist. I still feel I'm not an artist. But yes, I like photography, but I'm not. I don't consider myself a photographer, even though I have some photos on Vogue, published by Vogue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Magnificent. Come on.
but I never did. I've never done photography for living. And I'm always like, I can take picture when I like, and as to be free, I don't want to be like committed to, you know, take pictures. For other movies, I worked mostly as an editor. Yeah, other documentaries, and what I was doing, I was working on A Little Fellow. I worked on a documentary called Unzipped, that it was about the income inequality in the United States, and it was all filmed in Los Angeles. And I worked on another documentary. It was called The American Question, that it was about the polarization of United States. So in this way, I learned a lot of United States history, the United States political issues and parties, and I'm learning very quickly uh,
Yeah.
because it's like a full immersion in the U.S. background, and the good and the bad. That,
Well, you are a magnificent storyteller, I will
oh,
say.
thank you.
All of your work tells a story. It weaves together. It's like a beautiful tapestry of one's life and one's work. You really are quite magnificent, Davide. You really are. How can people see the film?
So we know we have one screening October 12th at Santa Cruz Film Festival.
Okay.
And then we have a screening October 8th and October 10th at the Chagrin, or in Chagrin Hills, Ohio, at the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival. So two more festivals, three more screenings. I know we have other screenings happening in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So in San Mateo, in San Francisco. We hope to have more here in LA. We are working on a couple of screenings in New York and in Washington, but we still don't have, for updates, you can go to a littlefellowmovie.com, and we have an update page there where you see the screenings, or our social media, A Little Fellow Movie on Instagram, A Little Fellow on Facebook. For the public, for the general public, we're working on distribution. So, but we are pushing that a little later in
Right.
we are still in
Right.
festival circuits,
Right.
but we already have an educational distribution. That's why we have a lot of
Oh,
students, and schools can watch it.
right.
And we wanted to get into schools before the general public.
Hmm.
In some way, it's a matter of money.
It always is, but this is such a little fellow has such a big impact. I believe that it will, of course, end up in schools and people will support it. This is a
Yeah,
fantastic film to get behind. And even for those of us, there's so many of us who bank with Bank of America,
yeah,
who are or are not Italian. I happen to be full-blooded Italian on all sides. My family does come from there, even though I'm born here. But so many people bank with Bank of America, and we walk into the building and have no idea of
yeah,
this rich history that this magnificent Italian man started. He also was a very hard worker, and if someone said no, he very politely found a way to yes. And I love that about him. And he's so inspirational to so many of us. Like, I'm going to have to let you go in a moment, but just even when you were talking about branches, right? They didn't really want to, enable him to do that here in California. So what did he do? He went out east, and he managed to figure it out that way until the rest of the industry was forced to say, okay, we'll open branches. So he was a very smart man. That's why this is an important film, right, to have in schools and for the rest of us to see. It's a brilliant, brilliant film, Davide. I commend you for doing it. I think this is just the beginning for you. I really do. Thank you.
I hope, we can have more screenings in LA, so maybe I can invite you.
Absolutely.
The screening. But yes, we are talking with PBS. Unfortunately, as you know, PBS now it's not in a good moment. But we're talking with PBS, Amazon, Netflix, all these streamers to see who's gonna be willing to work with us. But as I said, we're trying to push to the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, anything we can do, anytime that I can come and help push this forward, I'm happy to do that, because I believe in the film and I believe in this man's story. It's a magnificent story that I will say most people just don't know. And you put a real spotlight on him. So thank you.
We need stories like this.
We do.
I like to think the fact I wanted to end the movie with the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, because to me, even in another time when we started writing about this movie, the idea was to bridge community, not to separate them. I feel that the strength of United States is still the community and the way people gather together and makes things together, not when you isolate yourself, when you want to do everything your own. I feel that's still the strength of United States.
Of course it is. And through good times and bad times, that's what we're founded on. And you mentioned the Golden Gate Bridge because he provided the funding for the Golden Gate Bridge, which was really outstanding. I'm glad you brought that up, because in the movie I said, gosh, I had absolutely no idea that he was behind that as well. Many didn't want to fund it, but he believed in the project, and here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. It's a suspension bridge that many said could not be done, but he believed in it. And because of what he did, we have that today. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Most famous, landmark, U.S. landmark. If you think about it, it's seen in so many movies. People flock from everywhere in the world to see the Golden Gate Bridge. It's such a huge piece of history for United States. And to me, it's one of the most wonderful landmarks that United States have. It's such a magnificent. And if you go to San Francisco, there's a plaque there that says that Giannini funded the bank, the Golden Gate Bridge.
How exciting for you to do this film. Each step of the way, you'll find a plaque that he did here, and you'll find people in the Little Italy district in San Francisco who to this day are profitable because of his generosity, because he believed in them and the people who came before those who are there now. Just a magnificent film. I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And I hope to have you back on, and I hope to see you at one of the next screenings too, Davide.
Me too. I'd love to.
Yeah, this is such a great conversation. Thank you for all you do. You're quite a visionary. Davide Fiore, the man behind this great film, A Little Fellow, The Legacy of A.P. Giannini. Please, if you're able to see it in any of the places that it's going to be shown at any of the festivals, please make your way there, because it's really a terrific film. And I'm looking forward to the day that it's distributed and more people can see it, because it's really quite a magnificent project. Thank you again. And everybody, you can find my interview with Davide on our Little Italy podcast. It's on YouTube. Later, we'll post it on Facebook. It's also an audio podcast, so you can listen to it on iHeartRadio, anywhere on Spotify, or any place where you get your podcast. Just look up Little Italy podcast. Also, Deborah Kobylt Live, and my interview with Davide, and you'll find it right there. I appreciate everybody joining us. Please tell your friends about it as well, and to look out for A Little Fellow. to coming to a place near you. Appreciate it. And thank you again, David, for joining us. Davide, rather.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah. And everybody, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.